Hello, friends. My name is Dr. J.S. Chauhan. I'm the course director at Samasti. Samasti is Sehgal Minimal Access Surgery Training Institute. It is the academic and the training wing of the Sehgal Neo Hospital. At Samasti, we are giving training in laparoscopic surgery, hysteroscopy, and upper and lower GI endoscopy. So today I'll be discussing with you about the designing of the laparoscopic instruments. To perform a safe laparoscopic surgery, it is very important to know the designing of the laparoscopic instruments in detail. Just to give an example, if we talk of the graspers, we have so many different type of graspers. Atraumatic grasper, semi-traumatic grasper, traumatic grasper, intestinal grasper. So if you just ask the OT technician to give you a grasper, he may give you any grasper, but if you will specify only, then he will give you a specific grasper. So you must be familiar with the names, their uses, and in which place they have to be used, how they have to be used, and then subsequently we'll also be discussing what are the other uses of the instruments besides their primary use. So I'll start with discussing about the varus needle. The first instrument which I'm going to describe you is the varus needle. Varus needle comes in different sizes. It comes in 8 centimeter, 10 centimeter, 12 centimeter and 20 meter size. So this, you can see that I'm using one measuring scale, and this is a 20 centimeter varus needle. This varus needle is a reusable varus needle, and this varus needle is a disposable varus needle. 8 and 10 centimeter varus needle, they are used for the pediatric patients. 12 centimeter varus needle and 20 centimeter varus needle, they are used for the adult patients. Varus needle has two parts. It has got an outer sharp needle. Okay, this is the sharp, taper cut needle, okay, which pierces the tough tissues. And there is an inner blunt needle, and the inner blunt needle also has an eye through which the gas flows. And this eye is connected to this ear inlet, okay. And then there is a regulatory valve is there. If it is in line with the shaft of the varus needle, this is open. If this is at right angle, so then this is closed. So the first thing that we have to do is, we have to measure the thickness of the abdominal wall. Just let me just introduce this into the varus needle, and then this can be screwed up. So before using the varus needle, first we have to check for the patency of the varus needle, and then we have to check for the spring action of the varus needle. So you can see that the spring action is good, okay, and the patency is also being checked. And then, we have to measure the abdominal wall thickness. So this, just for demonstration purposes, so suppose this is the abdominal wall of the patient, we'll just measure the abdominal wall thickness like this, okay. Why the abdominal wall thickness is important? Because that gives us idea that, how much we have to pierce the varus needle. The other thing is, when the varus needle pierces the peritoneum gets stented by 4 centimeter. So we have to leave the unguarded length of the varus needle, which is equivalent to the sum of the abdominal wall thickness as well as the 4 centimeters. The correct way of holding the varus needle is from the shaft of the varus needle, like a dart. The shaft of the varus needle rests, on the tip of the 4 fingers, and, this is pressed by the thumb from the opposite side. And the length of the varus needle that we have to leave unguarded depends upon the thickness of the abdominal wall plus 4 centimeters. Okay. So here I am going to demonstrate you that the varus needle, it when we are putting the varus needle, it, suppose, we have, so you can see that, this peritoneum is getting tented. And this peritoneum gets, because, the peritoneum is very free. So the peritoneum gets tented almost by 4 centimeters. Okay, so again, let me demonstrate you that, we put the varus needle through the incision in the skin, and then this is the peritoneum side. So this gets tented by almost by 4 centimeters. So 4 centimeters plus the abdominal wall thickness, that much length of the varus needle we have to leave unguarded. So the other important thing is that the air inlet of the varus needle should always be in open position. We have to hold the varus needle like a dart, like this. And then, we have to start, before starting the insufflation, we have to do certain confirmatory tests that your varus needle is safely into the peritoneal cavity. So this we have already discussed, in our class, on the access technique. So this varus needle is basically used for creating pneumoperitoneum, and sometimes, this varus needle can also be used, as a port closure needle. For doing that, we can pass one, nylon suture, through this varus needle, okay, and then tie a knot and hide the knot, in the assembly of the varus needle, and then, we can use it, to feed the suture in, and then we can also use it, to do the port closure. And this varus needle, sometimes, some surgeons also use it, for doing the IPOM repair of the ventral hernia. So how this is done? So this we'll be discussing when we discuss, about the IPOM repair and about the port closure. So this was about the varus needle. The next instrument which I am going to describe to you is the ports. So ports, every port has 2 components. This is the trocar, okay, and this is the cannula, okay. So this is the trocar and this is the cannula, and both together, they make a port. So we use different size of ports in doing laparoscopic surgery. This is a 3 millimeter port. So basically this 3 millimeter port is used for the pediatric patients, and also for some adult patients, who are very really thin, and particularly in female patients, to make the scar size as small as possible. This is the 5 millimeter port, okay, with a trocar. This is a 10 millimeter port. This 10 millimeter port has a flap wall. This is a flap wall. Okay, and this flap wall is a unidirectional. Then this is a again a 10 millimeter port, but this 10 millimeter port has a magnetic wall. So this is the magnetic wall. Okay, so you can see the magnetic wall, and this magnetic wall can be removed. So I am removing this magnetic wall. So this is a magnetic wall, okay, and this also opens in a it's also unidirectional. So I am closing this. So whenever we'll put any instrument or anything, so this magnetic wall will get lifted up like this, okay, and as soon as the instrument is withdrawn, so this magnetic wall, because of the magnetism, again, falls back into the position and closes the port. So this 10 millimeter port has a magnetic wall. Then we have got a 12 millimeter port. These are the 12 millimeter port, okay, with the trocar, and again, with a magnetic wall. And then this is again a 12 millimeter port, okay, and but this is a disposable port, okay, and the trocar is also taper cut. And then this port, this is a Hessen port, okay. So this Hessen port, is again 10 millimeter in diameter. So this Hessen port basically we use, whenever we are doing the open access technique. Okay, so we have already discussed about the open access technique and the closed access technique. So this is a 10 millimeter Hessen cannula, okay. And then we have got different shapes of the trocars also. So this trocar, as you can see, is a blunt trocar. So this trocar we use with a Hessen port, and also the blunt trocar we use whenever sometime while we are doing laparoscopic surgery, the ports come out, okay, and to reinsert the ports, then we use the blunt trocar, so that the blunt trocar will not make any new passage. And these trocars, as you can see, these are the taper cut sharp trocars. So whenever you have to insert a port, okay, for the first time, so it is always preferred that, we use a sharp taper cut trocar. Why? Because, we'll need less force to introduce the port. So, and then we also have got a conical trocars. So conical trocars are also used, okay, sometime to insert the ports which have accidentally come out. Okay. Then comes the length of the ports. For pediatric patient, the length of the ports, as you can see, is around 8 centimeters. Okay. Then the length of the ports which we use for the adult patients, varies from 11 millimeter to 16 millimeter. Okay. So this, if I am removing this trocar, this washer is coming out. This washer is not snugly fit. So if you will see that the length of this trocar is almost 11 centimeters. Okay. And for bariatric patients, the length of the ports, is usually 16 millimeter. As you can see on this scale, the length of the port is almost 16 millimeters. So 11 millimeter and 60 millimeter ports, they are used for the adult patients, and for the pediatric patient, we use the length of the port is only 8 to 9 centimeters. Okay. So whenever, we have to insert the port, after doing the pneumoperitoneum, okay. First of all, we have to close this air inlet. In case of varus needle, the air inlet is positioned in an open position. But whenever we are inserting the port, so this air inlet is in a closed position. Okay. And then how to hold the port, this is very important. Okay. So another thing, which I like to share with you is that these trocars, they have got an eye, towards the sharp end of the trocar, okay? And this eye communicates, this trocar is hollow inside, and this eye is communicating, at the top end of the trocar. So as soon as the port enters the abdominal cavity, the gas will start passing from this eye and, will be released from this top end. And this gives us a hissing sound. Now, how to hold the trocar when we are going to put it inside the abdomen? The correct way of holding the port is that, if you're a right-handed person, stretch out your palm. Okay, the head of the port, should be placed against your thenar eminence. Okay, and the middle finger, this is my middle finger. The middle finger should wrap around the air inlet, and the index finger should be spread on the shaft of the port. Okay, so that when I'll be inserting the port, only this much length of the port is now unguarded, okay? And beyond that, my index finger is guarding the port so that accidentally or inadvertently, okay, I do not, push the port too much inside the abdominal cavity, okay? Although already there is a pneumoperitoneum, okay, and there is a distension of the abdomen, and there is a distance, between the abdominal contents, which is mainly the bowel and the omentum and the abdominal wall. So we have to still safeguard, okay, by putting the index finger like this, okay. And the varus needle, as we have already discussed, it is put in obliquely, okay, and its direction is towards the pelvis, okay, aiming towards the anus. But the ports, when we were putting them, we put the ports, vertically down, okay, and with the screwing movement of the wrist like this. And there should be a constant pressure. The abdominal wall in a young athletic patient, is quite tough to pierce, okay. So for that purpose, first of all, we have to make sure that our trochas, okay, they are really sharp, okay, and then we have to give a constant pressure, and we have to keep on screwing the port inside, okay, by half rotating the wrist. And at no time, we have to decrease the force, which we are applying to insert the port. Because if we do that, the port is not going to progress. And as soon as, we have a giveaway feeling that the port has entered the abdominal cavity, so then, we can just lift up our hand, okay, and then, we can listen to the sing sound, of the carbon dioxide which will be escaping from this top end of the port, okay. And then, we can remove this trocar, okay, then further we can little bit open this valve and the gas will come out with a gush, okay. Now connect the tubing from the insufflator, with this air inlet, and then we can open it up, okay, and then we can put the telescope or any other instrument, okay, which we want to use inside this port, okay. So now a little bit I will like to discuss with you here, whenever we are doing laparoscopic surgery, there is always a, there is a gas leak, okay. The gas leaks, whenever we are, changing the instruments, okay. Suppose, we have been using with the Maryland, now we need a grasper or a scissor, okay. We remove the instrument, then we again insert the instrument, okay. So we are changing the instruments, so the gas leaks at that time. The other places from where the gas can leak, the first and the most commonest reason is that, these ports, this is a 10 millimeter port, the inner diameter is 10 millimeter and the outer diameter will be 11 millimeter. So if your skin incision is more than the 11 millimeter, so then the gas may be leaking from the side of the port, okay. So ideally in the beginning, as a beginner, you can always, take an impression of the port, on the skin of the patient like this, okay. So I do not know whether you can see this, the mild, so maybe here. So there is you can take the impression on the skin and then you can cut, only inside, okay. So that is the one place, from where the gas can be. The other common cause is that you are seeing that, all the ports, they are having this regulatory valve, okay. So you will be connecting tubing from the insufflator only into one of these air inlet. The rest of the ports, the air inlet should be in a closed position, okay. So if by mistake, one of the ports, their air inlet is in an open position, so then gas can leak from there also. The other place from where the gas can leak is, there is a rubber seal inside this port. So this is a flap wall. So there is a flap wall is here, okay. Can you listen to this now? Okay. So this flap wall, this is it's a spring loaded into this, okay, and this also opens unidirectionally, okay. And then other thing that you have to learn here is that inside this flap wall, there is a rubber seal. I think in this, there is a gray colored rubber seal is there, okay. And this rubber seal, when it closes, so it will snugly, close this opening, and this will prevent any gas leak, okay. So this sound which you are listening, this is a rubbery sound, okay. And this rubbery sound indicates, okay, so that the rubber seal is intact, okay, it is not torn, okay. So whenever, we are inserting the port, okay, you must ensure that the rubber seal is intact, okay, so that you can, I think you can listen to this sound also. This is a good sound. If the rubber seal is broken, so then this sound will turn into a metallic sound. So that port, you have to change that rubber seal, okay. So if that rubber seal is broken, so then gas can leak from there also. And then, there is another washer at the top end. So this washer, the 10 millimeter size cannula, so this also should be intact, okay, so that whenever we are inserting any 10 millimeter size instrument, so this rubber seal, because this flap valve will open whenever we are inserting the instrument, so gas will come into this chamber. Now the gas can leak, okay, from this top end. To prevent that gas leak, so this rubber washer, it should not be torn, okay, it should be intact, and it should not be loose also, because of the repeated use. So this top washer, it may get loosened up, and then it will not be snugly fitting. So it should be snugly fitting, and this will prevent any gas leak from here. So these are the 4 sites, from where the gas can leak. And, this gas leak, we have to, keep a notice of this by looking into the total volume of the gas used. Okay. And now I will discuss with you, like while doing surgery, we have sometime we are using the 5 millimeter size instrument, sometime we are using the 10 millimeter size instrument. So now I'll be discussing with you about the reducers. So we have discussed about the trocars. So most of our hand instrument which we use in laparoscopic surgery, they are 5 millimeter in diameter. So if we are using 5 millimeter port, so then directly we can put the instrument inside, okay, and we can remove the instrument inside, okay. But in laparoscopic surgery, sometimes we may have one 10 millimeter port for the camera, another 10 millimeter port, okay, maybe for the tissue retrieval, and maybe for suturing knotting also. So whenever we have a 10 millimeter port and we have to use a 5 millimeter instrument, so then we cannot put the 5 millimeter port, into the 10 millimeter camera. If we do that, so all the gas will be leaking, okay, and there will be complications. So to prevent that, we use 2 type of reducers, okay. So these 2 type of reducers, one is a long reducer, other is a top mounted reducer, okay. So if we are using a long reducer, okay, and which is a better one to use, so then what you have to do is that you insert 1/3 length of the instrument inside the reducer, then hold both together like this, okay, and then put it inside first the reducer and then push the instrument inside. And if you have to remove the instrument, pull out 2/3 length of the instrument, okay, and then hold both together, the reducer as well as the instrument, and then remove it, okay. So we cannot leave the reducer inside. Suppose, we have inserted the instrument like this, okay, and now if I will remove the instrument alone, so then all the gas will be leaking, from this long reducer. So always, if you're using a long reducer, okay, so then insert the instrument together with the reducer and remove the instrument along with the reducer. So the other type of reducer is a top mounted reducer. So this is a top mounted reducer, okay, and If you are not using the long reducer, so then we have to use the top mounted reducer. How to use the top mounted reducer? First of all, you have to fit the reducer here. You have to put it there. Okay, so this system will do it for you. Okay. And then if you have to use the 10 millimeter instrument, so directly you can put through this cannula. And if you have to use the 5 millimeter instrument, so then you will, you will use this top mounted reducer. Now this washer, so this washer has an opening, which is fit for the 5 millimeter instrument. Okay, so then we can put a 5 millimeter instrument through this, and now, it will prevent any gas. And whenever, you are doing it, it is also not going to come out. Okay, and when you have to remove the instrument, so then directly you can remove the instrument. There will be no gas leak. Why? Because at that time, so this flap valve will come and close the cannula. So this is the top mounted reducer. So as I've already discussed with you, that if you have to do any tissue retrieval like appendix and all, so then always, the long reducer will be better because you can hide it there. Similarly, if you have to do the suturing knotting, okay, then also if you are using the endoski needle, okay, and if you are using a big needle more than 35 millimeter in size, so then also the long reducer will be better. And another thing is that gesture imprecision. If you are using a long reducer, okay, the gesture imprecision is less, with a long reducer. But the gesture imprecision with the top mounted reducer will be more. Okay. So if you are using a top mounted reducer, so then gesture imprecision, okay, will be more with the top mounted reducer. So this was regarding, using 10 millimeter cannula, with a 5 millimeter instrument, for which I have discussed that we'll be using either the long reducer or the top mounted reducer. So now I am going to discuss with you about the hand instruments which we use for performing our laparoscopic procedures. So first of all, you must know that the laparoscopic instruments, they are of different lengths, for different age groups. For the pediatric patients, for the newborn and the junior pediatric patient, the length of the instrument will be 20 centimeter or 28 centimeter. For adult patients, the length of the instrument is 36 centimeters. And for obese patient, whenever we are doing surgery for the obesity, like the sleeve gastrectomy or the gastric bypass, the length of the instrument is 45 centimeters. And the length of the instrument, 36 centimeter, is from the tip of the instruments. So you can see here, this is 30 centimeters, and this is up to the rotation knob. Okay, so then another 6 centimeters. So this is 36 centimeters. So all instruments, from standard companies, from big companies, for the adult patient will be either 36 centimeters, and for the bariatric patients, it will be 45 centimeters. So you can see that it is here 30 centimeters up to this place, and another 15 centimeters up to here, okay, up to the rotation now. So this is 45 centimeters instrument, okay. So then we have to discuss, these are reusable instruments, and, these instruments we can dismantle, for doing maintenance of the instruments. So every hand instrument, has 3 parts. So one part, is a handle. The second part is, if I am removing it from here, so you will see that, there is a ball here. I think you can look that there is a ball here. There is a ball, okay, and for this ball there is a socket here, and we can put the ball into the socket, and then we can, close this knob. Okay, but then the three parts which I was telling you, that, one is the handle, and then the second part is the insert. This is the insert. So this I am removing the insert now. Now this insert is out. Okay, this is the insert. And then the third part, is the insulation sheath. This is the insulation sheath. So these are the three parts of the instrument. This is the insert, this is the insulation sheath, and this is the handle. After every procedure, we have to thoroughly wash the instruments. We have to wash the serrations, and we have to, wash if there is any blood or any body fluid is attached, okay? But maybe after every week or 10 days, we have to dismantle our instruments. And then, we have to do the maintenance of these instruments, okay? With the maintenance, what I mean is that we have to check the insulation, okay? And, we have to check this insulation, for any breach in the insulation. So first you can just, hold this insulation in your hand, and then you can rotate it, and then you can just look for any insulation breach. And then another important thing is that, using a magnifying glass, you have to look the whole length of the instrument. This is very, very important. Why this is important? Examining the insulation sheath under magnification is very, very important, because, the smaller the breach in the insulation, the more will be the burn. So just to emphasize it to you that, suppose, there is an insulation breach, of the size of a pin. Okay, so this is the pin, which I am using in my turban, okay. So this is a pin, very, it's very sharp, okay, very pinpointed, okay. So the smaller the breach in the insulation, more will be the burn, because according to the burn equation, which you already learned, burn is inversely proportional to the area in contact. So lesser the area in contact, more the burn. And this is why, for cutting and all, we use the hook, and we use the tip of the hook, okay. So similarly, insulation will be inspecting for any insulation breach, okay. And then, insert will be inspecting, okay, so that, all the jaws and everything is fine, okay. And in maintenance, we have to thoroughly clean it, and we have to we have to do the oiling. So we'll be doing the oiling at the hinges, okay. So these are the hinges, we'll be doing the oiling. And then another thing is that we have to do the oiling of this, the ball and socket joint, okay. And then we have to inspect the handle, okay. We have to inspect, that our knob for the connecting it to the monopolar cable is also perfect. And we have to see that, so this is also moving properly, okay. And we have to put some oil here, we have to put some oil here, okay. So maybe after every week or 10 days, we have to do this inspection of the insulation, okay. We have to do the oiling of the instrument, and then we can reassemble instrument, okay. Now the best thing about these reusable instrument is that, suppose, if your insert is spoiled, so then you only need to change the insert. Suppose your insulation is spoiled, so you only need to change the insulation. Same for the handle. So you don't have to throw your instrument, okay. So whatever is defective or whatever is not working well, so that you can remove. So now this is again the instrument is assembled. Now the other thing that you have to learn is that how to hold the laparoscopic instrument. The thumb goes in the ring at the back. The ring finger goes in the ring in the front ring, okay. And then index finger is used to rotate the jaw of the instrument, okay. So to rotate the jaw of the instrument. And another thing is that whenever you have to rotate the jaws must be in open position, okay. So then the rotation will be easier, okay. So I am rotating here, okay. The jaw is rotating, okay. If I am trying to rotate in the closed position, rotation will be difficult, okay. So index finger for rotation, okay, and this middle finger, this is for supporting the instrument, okay. The ring finger in the ring in the front, thumb, at the ring at the back, and this little finger, this is used for locking and unlocking those instruments, which have got a locking provision. So just let me show you here. So this instrument has locking provision, okay. So we can lock it here and we can unlock, using our little finger. So you can lock it and you can unlock. So you can lock it and then you can unlock. So this is the way, how to hold the instrument. So the next instrument now, which I am going to discuss with you, is the grasper, which is very commonly used. And, we have 3 different type of graspers, for performing the laparoscopic surgery. So, the 3 different type of graspers that we have. Okay. So one, we have got a atraumatic grasper. So here atraumatic grasper, you will see that the serrations, are very, very smooth. The serrations of the jaws of the atraumatic grasper, they are very smooth, and it is fenestrated also. Fenestrated means that there is a hole, in the jaws. Okay, and these grasper, as the name suggests, these are atraumatic grasper. Look, I am trying to pinch my finger with the grasper, but I am not getting hurt. Okay, so I am pinching okay. So these graspers, so they are used to, hold maybe the appendix, maybe the fallopian tube. Okay, and similarly, we got another intestinal grasper. So this is an intestinal grasper. This is also atraumatic. This is a long job, because we have to hold the intestine with this, and this is also fenestrated, and this is also, totally atraumatic. Okay, and this grasper also has a special name. This is called as a Crochet forceps. This is a Crochet forceps. Okay, so this is the most atraumatic instrument. Even the tip of this instrument is also blunt. Okay, so maybe if you close the jaw of this grasper, okay, so then you can use it for doing any blunt dissection also. And if you have to hold appendix, fallopian tube, bowel, okay, if you have to walk over the bowel, okay, so then we'll be using this atraumatic grasper. Okay, so then the second type of grasper, is a semi-traumatic grasper. So if you will see this semi-traumatic grasper, here the serrations, they are not smooth. Okay, they are crude serration. Okay, and so this atraumatic grasper, we can use to hold the the round ligament. This can also be used to hold the Hartmann pouch. Okay, any tough structures, so this can be used to hold the any tough structures, but this will not be using on fallopian tube or appendix, so because it can cause a serosal injury. Okay, and then the third type of grasper that we have, they are the traumatic grasper. These are the traumatic grasper. As you can see, the jaw of this traumatic grasper has teeth. This is a 2:3, traumatic grasper. The 10 millimeter traumatic grasper, they are single action jaw instrument. So, but this is the double action jaw instrument. Okay, so this can be hold to hold the fundus, while you are doing the lap cholecystectomy, to push the fundus towards the right shoulder of the patient. So whenever, you are asking for a grasper while you are operating, so you must be clear in your mind that, to which type of grasper you want, whether you want a atraumatic grasper, semi-traumatic grasper, okay, or the traumatic grasper. And before using it, make it a habit to see the jaw of the grasper, okay, on the monitor, under the vision of a telescope, and only then use it. So other hand instrument, which is a very, very versatile, okay, instrument, which we use in laparoscopic surgery, is a Maryland. Okay, so this is a Maryland. Okay, and if you will see, the jaw of the Maryland, okay, so this is curved, okay, and so this more or less resembles the mosquito artery forceps, which we use in our open surgery. Okay, and the fully open jaw of the Maryland, Okay, this is a fully open jaw of the Maryland. This is a short jaw Maryland. The normal size Maryland, the fully open jaw, the length of the jaw will be around 22 millimeter. So this you can see, this is around 2 centimeters or 20 millimeter, okay? And, the standard Maryland, if you will fully open the jaw, okay, that will be around 22 millimeter. These measurements are very important because, whenever you're making an anterior window, okay, between the cystic duct and cystic artery, so you have to create a window, okay, by fully opening the jaw of the Maryland, okay. So this Maryland is a very, very versatile instrument. This is used for suturing knotting, and as we'll be discussing, with the needle holder, so with the curved needle holder, if we'll be using, this curved Maryland, the wrap taking will be very, very easy. If you are doing suturing knotting in an ipsilateral port position where the manipulation angle is only 30 degree, so this instrument will be of immense use. Or you can use, another curved needle holder in your left hand. And, this is also used to hold peritoneum, okay, and so this is also used to hold the suture, okay, whenever you're doing any continuous suturing, okay, when you're following the suture, okay. And this instrument is also used for the making windows, like making anterior window, posterior window, because this is a tough instrument, okay, this is a solid instrument, okay. Another thing that you have to know is that, the closed jaw of the Maryland, so it measures around 3 millimeter. Whenever you're putting a clips, okay, for cystic duct or cystic artery, the distance between the clip should be 3 millimeter or 6 millimeter, okay. So you can have a rough idea, by looking at the closed jaw of the Maryland, okay. And this Maryland, you can see that, it has got an attachment for the monopolar cable. So, you can use it with the monopolar energy source, okay. And this Maryland, you can use for doing contact coagulation also, okay. And contact coagulation, with the monopolar, we can do, for any vascular adhesions, okay. If you are doing any, adhesion lysis, and if you think that, the adhesions are vascular, so then we can, cook them with the non-contact coagulation using the Maryland. So this is a very, very versatile instrument, okay. So we also have a Maryland, so which we can connect it with the bipolar energy source also, and that is called as a Roby's dissector. So that is again very, very useful instrument, for doing TLH by the gynecologists. Thank you very much for listening to this discussion on the various instruments, the instrument which were used for creating pneumoperitoneum, the access instruments, the various ports, okay, and then various hand instruments, and also, the how to dismantle, how to maintain the reusable instruments. So thank you very much once again.